Good afternoon, friends. Today we shall discuss about performance management, and this we are discussing in the context of international human resource management. The complexities of managing performance in multinational enterprises, which are globally distributed, facilities have received a great deal of professional and academic attention in the last decade. Diversity in cultures, production and operations, geographical dispersal, and varieties of modes of operations all combine to make performance measurement and the creation of performance management processes that are simultaneously locally relevant and globally comparable a major challenge for HRM practitioners. Monitoring performance and ensuring conformity to agreed upon standards are significant elements in the managerial control systems of a multinational firm. Performance management, it is a process. This enables the MNEs to evaluate and continuously improve individual, subsidiary unit, and corporate performance against clearly defined preset goals and targets. While evaluating subsidiary performance against these expectations, it's important to recognize various constraints that may affect goal attainment. Now, this picture, of course, which I borrowed from a book, clearly shows the perspectives, issues, actions, and consequences in a multinational enterprise so far as performance management is concerned. One side, I think in the first one, we're saying global corporate strategies, roles, and processes, which will impact on pattern of priorities, global or local emphasis. Not only that, the local strategies, rules, and processes, they too impact the pattern of priorities, global or local emphasis. All these in turn influence performance management processes for individual employee. And this performance management process for an individual employee, it is impacted by remote appraisal sources and inputs and local appraisal sources and inputs. And when these things interact, certain critical issues they crop up. They are relating to implicit and explicit, person versus activity versus outcomes, purposes, development, pay, task roles, and other things. All these things in turn will have impact on individual outcomes like training, career implications, financial consequences, and additional subsequent assessment purposes, and then organizational outcomes like control, reputation, and legal compliances. Now, this picture clearly depicts the entire process of global performance and how it's impacted and how it impacts. Now we shall discuss what are the constraints that may affect performance management. There are 5 variables which we are going to touch upon. The first one happens to be whole versus part. We will discuss all these things in detail. Non-comparable data, volatility in the global business environment, separation by time and distance, variable levels of maturity across markets. These things we will discuss in detail. The first thing that we need to discuss it is about whole versus part. First, it's important to appreciate that by its very nature, the MN is a single entity that faces a global environment, which means that it simultaneously confronts differing national environments. Integration and control imperatives often place the multinational in the position where it decides that the good of the whole is more important than one subsidiary's short-term profitability. Another situation is where the MNS establishes a joint venture in a particular market in order to have a presence there, even though it has low expectations in the short term and may provide a relatively low level of resources to the venture. Therefore, the consequences of such global decisions for subsidiary management must be taken into consideration when considering the issue of performance appraisal of the senior managers of this joint venture. The second thing that we need to discuss it is about non-comparable data. The data obtained from subsidiaries may be neither easily interpretable nor reliable. What constitutes adequate quality control checks can vary widely from one country to another. Import tariffs can distort pricing schedules, and a dog strike in one country can unexpectedly delay supply of necessary components to a manufacturing plant in another country. Further, local labor laws may require close to full employment at plants that are producing at below capacity. All these factors can make an objective appraisal of subsidiary performance problematic, which in turn complicates the task of appraising the performance of individual subsidiary managers. Then the third thing we need to discuss about volatility in the global business environment. The third factor that can impact on the performance of subsidiary is the occurrence of volatility and turbulence in the global business environment. This volatility may require that long-term goals be flexible in order to respond to potential market contingencies. Each of these events has had profound implications for the global and local strategies of multinationals. Because subsidiaries operate under such volatility and fluctuations, they must tailor long-term goals to the specific situation in a given market. Problems arise when subsidiary managers perceive that goals and deadlines set by a distant headquarters strategy team are unrealistic and flexible due to a failure to take into account local conditions that change as a result of volatile environment. Obviously, involving regional and subsidiary managers in strategic planning assists in managing this perception. Then the next thing we need to discuss it is about separation by time and distance. A fourth factor that can impact on the performance of a subsidiary is the effect of separation by time and distance. Judgments concerning the congruence between the M&E and the local subsidiary activities are further complicated by the physical distance involved, time zone differences, the frequency of contact between the corporate head staff and subsidiary management, and the cost of the reporting system. Many M&E corporate managers spend a considerable amount of time traveling in order to meet expatriate and local managers in foreign locations. It is then possible for the HR corporate staff, when designing performance management systems, to more accurately account for the influence of country-specific factors. The growing use of web-based HRIS platforms are in part a response to the separation of time, distance, and culture experienced by multinational firms. These strategies may be driven by the complexity and inherent uncertainty of global performance and a sense that successfully competing in the global marketplace will require increased efficiency of operations. However, the potential of these technical systems to control and coordinate activities and processes within the M&E may be limited by unspoken or ill-articulated roles, processes, practices, criteria, and purpose. Then we shall discuss about the variable level of maturity. A final factors influencing the performance of a subsidiary is the variable level of maturity across across the markets. Without the supporting infrastructure of the parent, market development in foreign subsidiaries is generally slower and more difficult to achieve than that at home, where established brands can support new products and new business areas can be cross-subsidized by other divisions. As a result, more time may be needed to achieve results than in customary in a domestic market. And this fact ought to be recognized in the performance management process. Further, variation in customs and work practices between the parent country and the foreign subsidiary need to be considered. Now, we shall discuss about M&E control and performance. Now, this diagram depicts M&E control and performance, formal and informal control activities, and they focus on standardization of practices socialization, and compliances to norms and values. They affect the global mix of strategic outcomes and results. And this global mix of strategies, outcomes, and results, it is influenced by M&A headquarters and subsidiary. Now we shall discuss about these things. M&A control and performance. Performance management is a part of M&A's control system because performance targets are a part of formal control. Though formal control mechanisms and communication to the feedback and appraisal aspects, performance management also contributes to shaping corporate culture both formally and informally, thereby acting as an informal control mechanism as well as part of the bureaucratic control system. Employees are rewarded for adopting appropriate work behaviors, and this in turn reinforces normative control. It is through formal and informal control mechanisms that the MNEs achieve consistency, coordination, compliances of desired behavior and outcomes to implement its global strategy. These behaviors and outcomes are expected at all levels and areas, at headquarters as well as in subsidiary operations. In a sense, by adopting a performance management approach, MNEs are drawing on a number of human resource management activities to realize performance goals which are set during the performance appraisal process. Its proponents argue, somewhat convincingly, that the effective performance management is beneficial to both individuals and the firm. Some strong goal setting and appraisals are key elements of an individual performance management system that also may include training and development and performance related pay. Now we shall discuss about performance management of international employees. International assignments, they vary in terms of the duration and the scope of physical relocation required. That is, from traditional expatriate assignments, when expatriates and usually their family members relocate, to virtual assignments where no physical relocation by employees or their families is required. I think we discussed all these things in detail while discussing about expatriates. When attempting to manage the performance of staff working across the multinationals, it is essential to consider all these variables in relation to the nature of international assignment. Measuring expatriate performance. Failed international assignments can be extremely costly to an organization. There is no universal approach to measuring an expatriate performance given that specifics related to the job, country, and weather variables will need to be considered. Employers must identify and communicate clear job expectations and performance indicators very early in the assignment. A consistent and detailed assessment of an expatriate employee's performance, as well as appraisal of the operation as a whole, is critical to the success of an international assignment. Issues such as the criteria for timing, issues such as the criteria for and timing of performance review, raises, and bonuses should be discussed and agreed upon before the employees are selected and placed on international assignments. Now we shall focus on expatriate performance management. It is important to consider the impact of the following variables and their relationships. Number one, the compensation package. Two, the task, the assignment task variables and role of the expatriate, headquarters support, the environment in which performance occurs, that is the subsidiary or foreign facility, cultural adjustment of the individual and the accompanying family members. Now, this is the diagram which talks about variables affecting expatriate performance. So we have shown compensation package, task, headquarters support, host environment, and cultural adjustment. And these things we shall discuss in detail. Compensation package. Perceived financial benefits along with the progression potential associated with an overseas assignment, they are often important motives for accepting the postings. If these expectations are not realized during the assignment, the level of motivation and commitment is likely to decrease, thus affecting the performance. The next thing we need to talk about, task and role. Task variables are generally considered to be more under a multinational's control than environmental factors. Because of this relative control, task variables can be better assessed and more easily changed depending on the level of position and the nature of the task assignment. Along with the specifics of the task, the multinationals, like any other organization, determines the role that accompanies each task position. A role is the organized set of behaviors that are assigned to a particular position, although an individual may affect how a role is interpreted and performed, the role itself is predetermined. Now, expected tasks, they include CEO or subsidiary managers, oversees and directs the entire foreign operation, structure reproducer, he reproduces structure similar to what he knows from another part of the company. Troubleshooter, he analyzes and solves a particular operational problem. Operative, he performs functional job tasks in existing operational structure, in generally lower level supervisory position, other things. These things we shall discuss. Interesting presentations on executive performance management have recently been provided as part of wider discussion of corporate governance. Issues of performance criteria and over-reliance on shareholder value models of executive performance and the evolving roles and responsibilities and institutional safeguard to assure a complete, accurate, unbiased assignment or unbiased assessment of top level managers are widely cited for this critical task group. Now, types of expected assignments, they might be having technical 5 to 10% short-term knowledge transfer. Developmental, it includes 5 to 10% in country performance and acquisition of local understanding by assigning. Strategic 10 to 15%, high profile activities for developing global perspective. Functional, 55 to 80%, more enduring two-way transfer of existing processes and practices. You might be wondering why these statistics are given. The reason happens to be very, very simple. When the performance management is done, one has to consider these things. Sometimes you need to give weightage at the time we will be considering these things. Now, the role conception. You can see multinational role center, host country stakeholders, role centers, PCN management behavior role centers, and role recipient. Now, in this one, what happens, what is communicated, what is perceived, and the role and the cultural aspects of the country, all these things one has to consider while evaluating. Then TCL role conception, it talks about again parent company roles, that is role center, then host country stakeholders role centers, TCN managers role behavior, TCN manager role recipient. And this one is also there is something called what you communicate and how the role is conceived and how role is communicated and the cultural aspects. See, all these things, they play a vital role whenever we are evaluating the performance of people. The difficulty this presents for an expatriate manager is that the role is defined in one country. Just now I have shown you the roles are conceived in one place, communicated in one place, performed at another place. Under these circumstances, when you think about evaluating the performance, several issues that crop up. So the difficulty this presents for the expatriate manager is that the role is defined in one country but performed in another country. That is, the cultural norms regarding the set of behaviors that define a manager in the US may not be the same as those considered appropriate for a manager's role in an important emerging economy such as Indonesia. Then, communication of role conception. Role conception is also communicated to the role recipient by host country stakeholders, namely subsidiary employees, host country government officials, customer suppliers, as shown by the dashed arrows in the previous picture. This, however, crosses a cultural boundaries. Role behavior provides the feedback loop again at two levels. The parent and the host country stakeholders trying to perform to differing expectation may cause role conflict. Then the most important thing what we do not understand is that people they are more committed to the parent company. Commitment to the parent company is perceived as important. Given the part that PCN plays in transferring how know-how and the preferred way of doing things into the subsidiary. This helps in explain this helps to explain the preference for using headquarters standards in expatriate performance appraisal as a control mechanism. If the PCN is perceived to identify too closely with the host country concerns, the term going native has in the past often been used to describe this perception. Some MNCs they will restrict the length of stay to no more than 3 years to contain the possibility of PCN identification with the local concerns. Because of the importance given to the parent as a role sender in performance appraisal, a PCN may elect to ignore role communication sent from the host country stakeholders if they consider that performance appraisal is determined by how role behavior conforms to the headquarters expectations. What we need to understand, after all, the expatriate's career is with the parent firm, not the host country subsidiary. Then the next thing we have to think about the headquarters support. The expatriate assignments, it differs from a domestic relocation as it involves the transfer of the individual and possibly accompanying family members into a foreign environment outside their normal cultural comfort zones. The individual's primary motivation for accepting the assignment may be career or financially oriented. But this is often mixed with a genuine feeling of loyalty and commitment to the sending organization. As mentioned previously, the process of adjustment to the foreign location typically produces, to a varying degree, a range of emotional and psychological reactions to unfamiliar situations encountered over the period of the stay in the host country. The level of headquarters support provided to the individual and the family is an important performance variable. Then the next thing we need to discuss, it is about the host country environment. The environment has an impact on any job, but it becomes of primary importance with regard to expatriate management, the international context, with its differing societal, legal, economic, technical, and physical demands. And these can be a major determinant of expatriate performance. Consequently, expatriate performance should be placed within its international as well as organizational context. Therefore, the five major constraints identified above in terms of multinational strategy and goal setting for the subsidiary are important consideration for expatriate performance management. The next thing we need to discuss it is about cultural adjustment. The process of cultural adjustment may be a critical determinant of expatriate job performance. Indeed, much of the literature reviewed in our discussion of the cause of expatriate failure covers the process of adjustment. It is likely that expatriates and their families will have some difficulty adjusting to a new environment. And this will impact on managers' work performance. The dilemma is that adjustment to a foreign culture is multifaceted and individuals vary in terms of their reaction and coping behaviors. Determining the relevance of adjustment to the new environment when assessing expatriate performance may be problematical. Corporate and local strategies and role expectations, they create much of the potential for the complexity and conflict in the definitions underlying criteria, processes, and standards that make up performance management. Regional and national institutional, regulatory, and historical context, they too can impact the character of the criteria selected, task definitions, the timings, and even the purposes of performance management. Now we shall discuss performance management of non-expatriates. We studied in detail about this non-expatriate. Now we shall discuss about the performance management of non-expatriates. Non-expatriates, the international business traveler or frequent flyer, this is how we describe as employees whose work involved in international travel but who are not considered international assignees because they do not relocate to another country. Performance management issues may also impact upon the performance of another group, that is commuters. This is a form of non-standardized assignment where the person does not completely relocate but commutes between their home country and their office in another country. Now, what are the challenges that we face? I'm giving you just then we shall discuss. The first challenge happens to be performance criteria and goals for non-standard work. The second thing happens to be criteria for performance is subject to cultural differences. Third thing, isolating international dimensions of job performance is not as straightforward as for traditional expatriate jobs. Then, outstanding underperformance and failures will challenge performance appraisal processes. Then, performance appraisals are complicated by international context. Outside appraisers, ways to improve and rewards are unclear. Impact of non-standard work on HCN co-workers. These things we shall discuss. Then the other things, performance criteria, hard, soft and contextual goals. Who conducts the performance appraisal? Typically subsidiary managers, but could be team evaluator. Standardized or customized appraisal forms, frequency of appraisal, performance feedback, appraisal of HCN employees. These things we shall discuss. The first thing that we need to talk about is performance criteria. Goals tend to be translated into performance appraisal criteria, so specificity and measurability issues are important aspects. And we need to recognize that hard, soft, and contextual goals are often used as the basis for performance criteria. Hard goals are objective, quantifiable, and can directly measured. For example, return on investment and market share. Soft goals tend to be relationship or trait based, such as leadership style or interpersonal skills. Contextual goals attempt to take into consideration factors that result from the situation in which performance occurs. M&E commonly use arbitrary transfer pricing and other financial tools for transactions between subsidiaries to minimize foreign exchange risk exposure and tax expenditure. Another consideration is that all financial figures are generally subject to problem of currency conversion, including sales and cash positions. Further complications could arise because some host governments may decide to place restrictions on repatriation of profits and currency conversion. The nature of the international monetary system and local accounting differences may also preclude an accurate measurement of results. The dilemma this poses is that the use of transfer pricing and other financial tools is necessary because of the complexity of international environment. Multinationals cannot allow subsidiaries to become autonomous in financial management terms. They place controls on subsidiary managers. Thus, the financial record results which we have recorded for any particular subsidiary, they do not always accurately reflect its contribution to the achievement of the M&E as a whole. Therefore, such results should not be used as a primary input in performance appraisal. For this reason, a performance approach is now advocated rather than traditional appraisal, as it allows clarification of goals and expectation and performance against those goals. Then performance appraisal of subsidiary managers against hard criteria is always supplemented by frequent visits by headquarters and meetings with senior managers from the parent company. Soft criteria can be used to complement hard goals and take into account areas that are difficult to quantify, such as leadership skills, but their appraisal is somewhat subjective and in the context of both expatriate and non-expatriate assignments, more complicated due to cultural exchanges and clashes. However, relying on hard criteria such as financial data to evaluate how well a manager operates a foreign subsidiary doesn't consider the way results are obtained and the behavior used to obtain these results. An appraisal system that uses hard, soft, contextual criteria builds upon the strengths of each while minimizing their disadvantage. Then the next thing we need to discuss about is who conducts the performance appraisal. Employees are appraised by their immediate superiors, but this can pose a problem for subsidiary chief executive officers. They work in countries geographically distant, yet are evaluated by superiors back at headquarters who are not in a position to see on a day-to-day basis how the expatriate performs in that particular situation. Appraisal of other employees is likely to be conducted by the subsidiary CEOs or the immediate host country supervisor, depending upon the nature and the level of the position concerned. With regard to expatriate performance appraisal, host country managers may have a clearer pictures of expatriate performance and take into consideration contextual criteria. However, they may have culturally bound biases about the role behavior and lack an appreciation of the impact of expatriate performance in the broader organization context. Multiple raters are sometimes used in domestic context, namely 360 degrees feedback process. It has been argued that given the cross-cultural complexity of the foreign assignment, a team of evaluators should be used for performance appraisal. Then the next thing we need to talk about is standardized or customized performance appraisal forms. Domestic firms commonly design performance appraisal forms for each category, particularly those using a traditional performance appraisal approach rather than performance management. Such standardization assists in the collection of accurate performance data on which HR decisions can be made and allows for cross-employee comparisons. The question often posed is, should these standardized forms be adapted when used for appraising international managers? Employees who relocate within the multinational and non-expatriate assignees who also cross cultural boundaries in their performance context do not always feel headquarters based appraisal forms allow for consideration for the critical success factors of their performance like cross cultural competence. Then the next aspect is, what should be the frequency of appraisal? Frequency appraisal is commonly on a yearly basis, and this appears to extend to international performance systems. And even though the domestic oriented literature on this topic recommends on an ongoing combination of formal and informal appraisal and feedback. Then for performance feedback, one of the problems with annual appraisal is that employees do not receive the consistent, frequent feedback considered critical in order to maintain or improve their performance. The difficulty for the expatriate who is being evaluated by a geographically distant manager is that timely, appropriate feedback is only viable against hard criteria. For virtual assignees, this is further complicated when geographic dispersion dictates reliance on email communication. Interpersonal relations and an effective choice of communication medium are two factors influencing work group relations. Two managers concerned, if they have different views about what constituted the primary source of job performance and how performance feedback is provided and what role the subordinate will have in communicating with a superior, how conflict is handled, and what communication styles are expected, it results in serious miscommunication and bad consequences. Then, appraisal of HCN employees. In the issue of appraising, the performance of HCN employees confronts the issue of cultural applicability. Performance appraisal in different nations can be interpreted as a signal of distrust or even an insult. One way to overcome the dilemma of cultural adaptation is to use host country nationals to assist in devising a suitable system for appraising subsidiary employees and to advise on the conduct of the appraisal. At times, the need for local responsiveness may affect the multinational's ability to effectively implement a standardized approach to performance management at all levels within the global operation. Now, so far what we have discussed, how to appraise these international employees. We were discussing about performance criteria, who conducts standardized or customized appraisal forms, frequency of appraisals, performance feedback, and appraisal of HCN employees. So, these are the issues which are related to performance management um, in the context of international human resource management. Okay, I can take up a new topic. What I think the time is very less. So I'm not taking it. I think today I'm able to see Srinath. Hello, Srinath.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I think first time you are attending.
No, sir. I always attend the classes.
Acha, acha, are you, hope you are not from Ambedkar Open University in the sense employee.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm
You
the
are a
student,
cat.
sir.
Pardon?
I'm the student.
You are a student. Okay, okay. Then there is one more student, Nokia CO1 Plus. May I know your name? It's one more candidate. Okay, whatever it is. Thank you so much. We'll meet again
Thank you so much.
tomorrow. Reason is I have just 3 minutes. I think within 3 minutes, taking up a new topic, I think it is not proper. Therefore, I'll stop here. It's okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you.